Through a cold and snowy field in the Wild West, a ruthless outlaw named Bill rides her bike with a sharp and intimidating presence. As she travels, her eyes fall on a young woman named Lula, who is standing silently by the roadside, almost as if fate itself had placed her there. Bill doesn't stop, but acknowledges her with a glance before continuing her ride. Eventually, Bill arrives at a small, quiet church where a funeral is being held. The mourners gathered there immediately grow tense. Whispers spread quickly because everyone knows who she is. Bill's reputation as a cutthroat precedes her. Her mere presence demands fear and respect. Nobody dares to confront her, and instead, they step aside, creating a path for her to move freely. Without asking permission, Bill walks up to the coffin and takes a jacket from the deceased, treating the funeral as if it were her own stage. Meanwhile, far away from the church, Lula returns home. Her brother Jack delivers heartbreaking news. Both of their parents have just died of smallpox. Lula is devastated. With trembling hands, she forces herself to look at their lifeless bodies one last time. Grief overwhelms her, but before she collapses entirely, their grandfather Caleb arrives. Together, the family gathers around the bodies, holding each other close as Caleb leads a quiet prayer, offering their final goodbye. To prevent the disease from spreading, they set fire to the house, watching the flames consume their past before leaving for their aunt's home in Texas. On their way, fate once again weaves Bill into their lives. In an abandoned town, Bill reunites with her vicious gang. Together, they make their way to a river crossing, only to discover that Caleb's family has already paid for the ferry. Bill, never one to miss an opportunity, tries to charm Caleb into paying for her passage as well. But when her eyes linger too long on young Lula, it sparks Caleb's protective instincts. He steps forward, refusing Bill's advances, and draws his gun to defend his granddaughter. In response, Bill's entire gang draws their weapons too, turning the standoff into a powder keg waiting to explode. Suddenly, the ferry rope snaps, its loud crack startling Caleb. Acting on impulse, he fires his gun. The bullet narrowly misses Bill, grazing her head. Enraged, Bill retaliates with deadly precision, shooting Caleb twice and ending his life instantly. Chaos erupts as the gang seizes the moment. Jack is struck down and knocked unconscious, while Lula is dragged away against her will, her screams echoing across the riverbank. Sometime later, the gang rides into Sylvestertown, a place where fear often outweighs law. They burst into a general store, demanding supplies. The store owner, though armed with a gun, is too terrified to resist. Bill mocks him cruelly, forcing him to suck on candy from her hand, humiliating him in front of his son. Outside, Lula briefly regains consciousness on horseback. She spots the store owner's son and whispers for him to run for help. But her words betray her. Bill's men hear the commotion and turn back. Desperate, the store owner finally raises his weapon and fires. The bullet injures one of Bill's gang members, but it also seals his fate. Bill reacts instantly, pulling the trigger and shooting him squarely in the head. In the confusion, Lula tries to run, her legs stumbling through the muddy ground. The store owner's son rushes to her aid, but tragedy strikes. He is gunned down before he can save her. Lula slips, falls, and is once again captured by Bill, who drags her back with cold indifference. Meanwhile, Jack regains consciousness by the riverbank, only to discover that Lula and their cart are gone. Broken and lost, he tries to pray for Caleb, his grandfather, but his grief is too heavy. He collapses in tears, unable to finish the prayer. Still determined, Jack sets off to find his sister. His journey takes him to Sylvester, where he stumbles into a horrifying scene. The townsfolk have captured a random man, wrongly believing him to be Bill, and are preparing to hang him for the murder of the store owner. Jack fights through the angry mob, hoping the man might know where Lula is. But the crowd is too furious, too bloodthirsty. They shove him to the ground as the noose is tightened. When Jack looks up, he notices a girl, Jimmy Sue, being dragged away and forced into a carriage by a thug named Hector. The townspeople are so consumed with their makeshift execution that they don't even hear her cries for help. Moments later, the man is hanged before Jack's helpless eyes. He rushes forward to speak to him, to ask about Lula, but but is struck down by one of the angry locals before he can utter a word. Knocked unconscious, Jack once again fails to save someone he loves. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, the gang pauses to rest their weary horses. Lula, though frightened, tries to show defiance, telling Bill that her brother will come for her. Bill smirks cruelly and tells her Jack is already dead. As Bill tends to one of her injured men, Lula sees her chance and snatches a pistol from a saddlebag. But fear paralyzes her. Her hands shake, and before she can fire, Bill yanks the gun away. To punish her, Bill fires several rounds dangerously close to Lula's head, making her flinch and cry. At dawn, Jack wakes up lying beside the lifeless body of the wrongly executed man. A gravedigger named Eustace almost buries Jack as well, believing him to be dead. Once Jack convinces him otherwise, Eustace explains that Bill's gang was last seen riding north. Jack begs for transportation, but the only vehicle belongs to Eustace's partner Jones, a mysterious man with a quick temper and deadly skills. Inside a tavern, Jones is in the middle of a heated dispute. He's demanding full payment for a grave-digging job, but the local alderman mocks his height and tries to pay him half. The insults escalate into threats, and when the alderman tries to push him around, Jones unleashes his fury. In a blur of motion, he takes down the much larger man, slashing his arm and pressing a gun to his head. With cold confidence, Jones demands the money owed to him and walks out. Humiliated, the alderman sends his men after him. But Jones, clever as ever, frees their horses to slow them down. When the men try to chase, Jones calmly uses his rifle, equipped with a telescope sight, to shoot one of them from afar. The others quickly retreat, realizing they are no match for him. As Lula flees into the dark forest under the cover of night, her heart pounds with fear and desperation. Branches whip against her arms as she stumbles through the snow. But before she can get too far, she suddenly collides with the notorious DC brothers, Simon and Malachi. Startled, Lula prepares to scream, but the brothers assure her they mean no harm. They promise protection and lead her back to their rugged camp. There, by the flickering firelight, they explain their grim mission, hunting down a ruthless dwarf who has long been their sworn enemy. Lula listens anxiously, but before she can process their words, the sound of thundering hooves breaks the tense silence. Horses storm into the camp, and the shadowy figure of Bill appears. Without hesitation, Bill launches a brutal attack, shoving Simon directly into the campfire. The flames roar as he screams in agony, while Malachi, gripped by terror, flees into the woods. Bill wastes no time. She tracks down Lula once more, drags her back, and coldly shoots Simon in the chest, piercing right through his badge. As Simon collapses, choking on his final breaths, Malachi returns just in time to cradle his dying brother. Grief consumes him as Bill rides off with Lula once again, leaving only silence and ashes behind. The following morning, Jack and Jimmy finally catch up with Jones and Eustace. Jack, desperate and determined, offers them a new deal. If they help him save his sister, he will pay them with Caleb's land, property that now legally belongs to him. The promise of real reward convinces Jones, who accepts the offer and even hands Jack a gun for the journey. Their group rides until they reach a nearby town, where Jones enters an inn seeking whiskey and information. To his surprise, he finds himself face to face with Bill. The encounter is tense but strangely respectful. Bill mocks Jones for his short stature, while Jones retaliates by insulting her scarred face. Instead of violence, the sharp exchange sparks an odd understanding between them. Both outcasts, scarred by the world, used to mockery and fear. In a rare gesture, Bill shares candy with Jones before leaving the group puzzled by the bizarre moment of mutual recognition. Outside, Lula overhears the gang's conversation through a crack in the wall. When Jones casually mentions Jack's name while speaking with the innkeeper, Lula realizes with a jolt of hope that her brother is close, desperately searching for her. She listens intently, but before any rescue can happen, the situation takes a dark turn. Malachi reappears and ambushes Jimmy from behind, dragging her into a chokehold. Jones keeps his cool, talking the furious outlaw into confessing the truth about Simon's death. Stricken with grief and rage, Malachi reluctantly agrees to join forces with Jones's group, vowing revenge on Bill. Meanwhile, Bill herself continues her rampage. She storms into a quiet church, striking down the priest with violent fury before setting the sacred place ablaze. Later, Jones's crew discovers the aftermath. The church is nothing but smoldering ruins, and though the priest is horribly burned, he survives long enough to tell them what he knows. With his face scarred and trembling, he reveals the location of the thicket, Bill's secret hideout. He also shares a chilling piece of her past. Bill's mother, cruel and abusive, once treated her daughter as a curse for her sins. In a twisted act of vengeance, young Bill locked her mother inside their home and set it ablaze, burning her alive. The priest still remembers the blood-curdling screams that haunted the night. This revelation fuels the group's urgency, but tension among them boils over. Jack, tired of being treated like a child, lashes out at Jones. He challenges his authority, only for Jones to humiliate him effortlessly, pinning him down and threatening to shoot. Enraged, Jack fights back, but Jimmy intervenes. With tears in her eyes, she pleads for them to stop fighting, reminding them that they are bound together by fear, grief, and the same mission: saving Lula. Her words pierce through the chaos, softening even Jones. For the first time, he apologizes and lowers his gun, choosing unity over dominance. Meanwhile, in the woods, Lula dares to ask Bill if she intends to kill her. Bill, in an unsettling display of vulnerability, admits she doesn't know. Her voice trembles between cruelty and affection as she rests her head on Lula's lap, clinging to her like a broken child craving comfort. The moment is disturbing yet strangely tender, revealing just how fractured Bill truly is. The next day, Jones's group continues the pursuit, but the snowfall has begun to erase the gang's tracks, making the trail harder to follow. Still, they press onward, determined to enter the thicket. As night falls, they set up camp. Around the fire, Jones and Jack finally reconcile, sharing fragments of their past and finding a fragile bond of trust. The hunt for Bill is far from over, but as their paths tighten and destinies intertwine, one thing becomes clear. This is no longer just a rescue mission. It's a battle for survival, revenge, and redemption in a world where mercy is scarce, and the line between hero and villain grows thinner with every step into the thicket. Jones opens up by sharing a painful memory from his own childhood. His mother had taken her own life when he was still a boy, and not long after, his father sold him off to a traveling circus. Though the years with the circus were harsh, Jones admits that he still remembers the family he lost. Proof that love and blood ties never truly fade. Looking Jack in the eye, he assures him that Lula will never forget him, no matter what happens. The next day, the group finally tracks the gang to a rundown shack deep in the woods. They plan to wait for the right moment to strike, but Malachi, blinded by grief and thirst for revenge, refuses to wait. Slipping away from the others, he hides behind the privy, ready to ambush the first man who steps out. When one of the gangsters appears, Malachi pounces, but his rage makes him reckless. The outlaw easily counters, slamming him down and savagely stabbing him again and again. Jack, horrified, tries to rush forward, but Jones restrains him, knowing that charging in would expose their position. Jimmy, however, can't hold herself back. With trembling hands, she fires her gun, dropping the attacker in a spray of blood. The sound of gunfire forces the group's hand. Eustace, hardened by years of digging graves, declares they can't wait any longer. They must attack now. The men push forward, telling Jimmy to stay behind where it's safer. The gangsters inside the shack fire wildly from the windows, bullets splintering the wooden walls, while Lula hides helplessly in the corner. Bill, indifferent at first, doesn't even join the fight, until she spots Lula moving toward the back. Suddenly she bursts out with her guns blazing, dragging Lula with her into the misty woods. Back at the shack, Jones maneuvers around the side, sneaking into position. Eustace and Jack lay down heavy fire to scatter the remaining gang. But as the chaos erupts, another gangster catches Jimmy off guard. She manages to squeeze off one shot, wounding him, but he lunges and tackles her to the ground. The two wrestle violently in the snow, rolling until Jimmy briefly gains the upper hand. Just as she seems to have him pinned, the outlaw plunges a knife into her stomach. With blood pouring from her wound, Jimmy gasps as the man mutters a few final words in his native tongue before dying alongside her. Meanwhile, Jones realizes that Eustace has been badly wounded in the shootout. His face grim, Jones steadies his rifle, fitting it with the telescope. As he prepares to take aim, a furious outlaw barrels into him from the side, and the two men crash into the snow, thrashing and clawing in a brutal struggle for survival. In the woods, Jack stumbles through the fog, following the eerie sound of Bill's mocking laughter. He presses his back against a tree, heart pounding. Suddenly, a shot tears through his shoulder, spinning him around in pain. He tries to rise, only for a second bullet to slam into his other shoulder, dropping him to the ground. Bill emerges from the haze, stalking her prey with cruel delight. Lula screams and rushes to her brother, cradling him as Bill raises her pistol for the kill. But when she pulls the trigger, click, she's out of bullets. Seizing the moment, Lula throws herself at Bill, knocking her down and pummeling her face with furious punches. Bill only laughs through the blood, grabbing her knife and preparing to slit Lula's throat. The blows have left her dizzy, and for one brief second, she hesitates. That's all the time Jones needs. From a distance, his rifle cracks, and the bullet pierces Bill's skull. With wide eyes, Bill gasps one last word, "Mama!" before collapsing lifelessly onto the snow. Lula rushes back to Jack, holding him tightly. For one fleeting moment, they are reunited, siblings together again. But the wounds are too deep. Jack's body grows heavy in her arms, and with a final breath, he dies as Lula sobs over him, her cries echoing through the frozen woods. Elsewhere, Jones finds Eustace slumped against a tree, bleeding heavily. The gravedigger smiles faintly through the pain, relieved to know Bill is dead. He whispers that he has no regrets, glad he lived long enough to see justice done. With tears glistening in his eyes, Eustace looks up at the sunlight breaking through the clouds and takes his last breath, leaving Jones to mourn his old friend. Overcome with grief, but burning with resolve, Lula takes Bill's head and severs it cleanly. Together, she and Jones deliver it to the nearest sheriff. Shockingly, the sheriff confirms that the bounty is real, and it's massive. He insists on giving Jones credit, eager to make him famous as the one who finally killed Bill. But Jones refuses, asking that the legend remain faceless, the victory anonymous. With new clothes and a wagon, Lula and Jones set out together. On the road, Lula confesses the truth. She is alone now, with no family left. Looking at Jones with desperate hope, she asks him to stay by her side. Sometime later, back at Caleb's land, the two are living quietly. A grave has been dug in the backyard for Jack, a solemn reminder of the cost of their journey. Lula, now hardened but not broken, carries a scar across her neck, a permanent mark from Bill's knife, a symbol of survival and strength. And so, though the Wild West is filled with blood, betrayal and loss, Lula and Jones stand together at the dawn of a new chapter, scarred but alive. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss more powerful stories like this. Thanks for watching.